Hi there, I'm Beth Ewing. I am the Lutheran Saints in Ministry parish nurse. I was born and raised in Wyoming. I had no brothers and sisters, but I grew up with my 4 cousins, my mom's sister's boys. And that had a little bit to do with me turning out to be a tomboy when I was growing up. We were a very close family. We did live in the same town for a short amount of time, but we always spent holidays together. So it was a really great growing up with 4 brothers that I was lucky to have around. I was raised in the Catholic Church and actually went to a Catholic school for my first grade year. Had a lot to do with my faith formation for sure. I grew up in school doing band, choir, sports, theater, dance. My mom tells the story that she enrolled me in dance and ballet when I was 4 years old because I was so clumsy, and with the hopes that it would help me become more graceful as I got older. I went to the University of Wyoming in Laramie and graduated with a degree in nursing. And when I was looking for a job after I graduated, I went to a free dinner at the nicest restaurant in town with an Air Force recruiter, and the rest was history. I joined the Air Force, kind of surprised my mom and dad, but they were very supportive, and that kind of sums up my whole growing up with my family. They were always supportive, taught me to believe in myself and the importance of faith in my life. And so it was in the Air Force that I met my husband, John, and 28 years later, the Air Force spit us out back here in Ohio. My husband and I are avid scuba divers. You can't do much scuba diving in Ohio, I realize that, but John has managed to do it with teaching, and he goes out to the quarries here, but that's not for me. I prefer the sun and warm water and pretty fish. But we do also like to travel, so traveling to scuba destinations is one of our favorite things to do, and our favorite dive destination is Bonaire in the South Caribbean. I also love to ride bicycles, go camping in our trailer, and work in our yard, and I love to cook. And my goal is to have and try at least one new recipe a week. The first person that comes to mind is my grandma, my mom's mom. Her name was Dorothy. She was just such a great person. She was fun to be around. She, probably the thing that I remember her most about is I used to spend the night with her. And she'd always let me have as many pieces of toast with jam on it as I wanted in the morning when I had spent the night with her. And the other thing is she let me stay up late at night and watch the news with her. She made me feel so loved and always was interested in what I was doing and thinking. She was such a great woman with a really great sense of humor. Well, actually, I wanted to be a Broadway dancer. I was in dance my whole life, as I said, but my mom and dad, this was the one time in my life I remember them not being so supportive. When I said I was moving to New York to become a Broadway dancer, they said, no, we want you to go to school first and get your degree, and then if you still want to go to New York, we will let you do that. Because I think they knew I'd find something else that I was interested in doing, and they were right. So I started off majoring in dance at college and realized maybe there were a lot of other things out there I might like doing, and so I switched my major to engineering. My dad was a civil engineer, but it turns out I'm not so great in math. I have known God my whole life. From day one, Mom and Dad took me to church. As I said, I was raised in the Catholic Church. I used to think that our priest was God. And every time he walked into the church, my mom tells me I used to yell, "Hi, God," and embarrass the heck out of them. That background obviously led me, through the rest of my life in pursuing church. And so in junior high and high school, I was an altar girl in the Catholic Church when it wasn't popular to have girls as altar girls. In college, I was a part of the campus ministry and did a lot of retreats with them. In the Air Force, I managed to get to church, but never really was a member because we moved so much until we settled here in Fairborn, and then we became members of Abiding Christ. I started attending the Lutheran church when I was dating my husband because he was Lutheran. And I remember one of the pastors saying to me, "Did you know that Catholics make the best Lutherans?" And that at that moment I felt right at home. I don't think, I say I was a believer and I went to church and my whole life, but I don't really think, when I look back on it, that I trusted God until after I retired from the Air Force. I was looking for what my purpose was after I was no longer in the Air Force and realized that my job no longer defined who I was. And so it was kind of, I needed to put my trust in something to help me find that purpose. And so when we moved here to Ohio, I looked very hard for a midwife job, which is what I did when I retired from the Air Force, but I was not finding anything. And I kind of felt like Balaam in the story in the Old Testament about Balaam and his donkey, that I was like Balaam, being very angry at the fact I couldn't get a midwife job, or in the story, the donkey, when it was really the Lord that was standing in my way, trying to redirect me to something else. And so at that point, I realized that I was God's and His purpose was what I was meant to do. And I trusted that, and it took a long road to get there. But it was at that point that I said yes to becoming the LSIM parish nurse, and I have been happier than ever. His yoke is easy, truly, and His burden is light. COVID certainly has been a challenge. I think the biggest thing I've noticed is realizing how reliant I was on my normal routine and how that boxed me in maybe, and I was unable to see new ways of doing things. And so it did. It pulled the rug out from underneath me, and I know many of you have felt that way too. But it's helped me focus on things that I'd forgotten. Important things like sitting at the table and having dinner with my husband and not running from one meal to the next. My parents, helping them, and just refocusing on what's important. It has been a scary time, but I think the new things that our eyes have been open to are truly a blessing, and hope we can keep going down that road.